what if there is a swing set in the classroom and in the classroom playground, and there's a rule that says everyone is allowed to play on the swings. And without it, some kids might say, hey, these swings are for my friends only. That's not right. That might happen in real estate. I want to talk about fair housing because it's a pretty important topic. If you've ever heard of stories about people being turned away from buying or renting a home just because of who they are, these rules in fair housing are designed to stop that and keep things fair. Now, a couple examples of discrimination and why it's not allowed. All right, day 540. Welcome back. Today we're going live and we're going to be covering something that shapes our communities in a big way. Fair housing law. And obviously I'm not an attorney. I am not providing any legal advice, not investment advice, not soliciting any investments on this call. I'm just going through the materials from the legal aspects of real estate, and I thought, hey, what better way for me to learn material and master it than by learning how to teach it? And more importantly, how can I teach my own kids about all the things I learned in real estate? Because I like to think that I want to be able to leave the skills and information that's going to be valuable for them. So if you've ever heard of stories about people being turned away from buying or renting a home just because of who they are, these rules in fair housing are designed to stop that and keep things fair. So let's talk about a little bit today about what fair housing is, why it exists, and how it matters to you, whether you're a buyer, seller, or a neighbor, or a landlord, right? So at the highest level, right, fair housing law is a set of rules at both the federal and the state level. They make it illegal to treat people differently, just especially in real estate, just because of personal traits like race, religion, or family status. I like to think of, and I'm always looking for feedback, right? I'm always looking for feedback for good analogy. So I'll come up with a few ones, and I would love for you to give me some feedback on them, whether or not they resonate with you or your kids, because I'm learning how to explain these things to a kid. Because if you can simplify it, that's how it really helps people. Instead of trying to come with all this jargon and looking to make ourselves sound smarter and more complicated than what it needs to be. All right, so I like to think about, hey, what if there is a swing set in the classroom and in the classroom playground, and there's a rule that says, hey, everyone is allowed to play on the swings. And without it, I mean, some kids might say, hey, these swings are for my friends only, right? That's not right. Or maybe you have a library that lets everyone borrow books. It wouldn't be right if some people couldn't check out books and not check out books just because of their height, their hairstyle, the color of the hair maybe, right? Fair housing stops all the unfair blocking that might happen in real estate, especially if you are looking to rent, etc. All right. Now, obviously, there's whole different things about protected classes, so you should look up what is considered a protected class. Now, a couple examples of discrimination, right, and why it's not allowed. So if you refuse to rent or sell to someone, right, say, I don't rent to people of your background. That's a big no-no. And if you offer different terms, right, for example, if you charge higher rent or you have extra rules on certain groups of people, that's also not allowed. And obviously, when it comes to advertising, you can't post an ad that discourages people from a specific group, right? I mean, if you're having a birthday party, it's almost the same thing as, hey, you can't just invite friends and say, hey, no one with red hair can come, right? Or maybe you're trading Pokemon cards, right? And one kid says, hey, I will only trade with kids my age, but that leaves out all the other folks, even though they might have better cards, right? Fair housing says you can't exclude people that way. And you can't block people from a home or buying a home because of that, right? So when it comes to fair housing, there are federal rules and there are state rules. For example, the Federal Fair Housing Act, usually it covers the entire country, many nations. But there are some states, such as California, where they will add their own laws to add extra protection. It's like a federal layer as a base, and then you add extra protection layer on top. It's almost as if you have a school rule. The school rule might say, hey, you got to be nice. But then you have a classroom rule where also says, hey, no name calling, right? That's something that is pervasive across the entire school. But in that classroom, your teacher might have an extra rule that says, hey, no name calling. You have to raise your hands before you speak, blah, 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 right? Almost as if you have a family where they say, hey, everyone has to be kind. But then your mom will say, hey, no yelling to reinforce it, right? They both help maintain peace in the home, but it all adds up. It all adds together for the additional protection. Now, when it comes to protected class, right, different places can add more categories. For example, California might protect people based on gender identity, sexual orientation, or marital status. And those are different add-ons that will affect what you can do and can't do. And usually your state has either special additions or exclusions. Just make sure you look into those rules. Now, there is a terms called staring, block busting, and staring is when an agent either they subtly guide someone or buyer toward or away from a certain area because of who they are or what they look like. It's almost as if you have a teacher that says, hey, you can only sit in the back row because of your hair color. It's not okay. Blockbusting is when someone spreads fear, like saying a neighborhood's about to change drastically, so people should sell quick, right? Trying to generate some panic so that people will sell quick and usually at a loss. They're both not legal, okay? If you're a kid, right, let's say you want to join a science club. It wouldn't be fair for a teacher to tell you, hey, your type shouldn't go to do science, you should go do art. That's staring. Right? They're pushing you away from a choice that you're perfectly allowed to make based on your own preferences. But they really shouldn't do that. Again, I'm looking for different analogies, and if you have good ones, please let me know. All right. So let's keep going. Now let's talk about the obligations, the rights of a landlord, a seller, a buyer. And if you're a landlord or you're a seller of a home, you just can't go pick or reject people based on those protected classes or those protected traits. I mean, that doesn't mean you can't have certain conditions, though. You can still check credit score, right? But it has to apply to everyone equally. As a buyer or renter, if you suspect you're being untreated fairly, you can file a complaint or speak with a fair housing agency. So it's very, very important that you don't try to go down this road, whether that's intentional or unintentional. But that's why you're listening to this, right? You're getting educated. You're learning how to prevent these issues from ever popping up in the first place. All right. So I looked at the top search question. Okay, what if a landlord says no kids? And families with children are usually a protected class, right? Unless the property is or legally qualifies as a senior committee, they might be a 55 plus community, right? Telling someone no kids allowed is generally discriminatory. I mean, you don't see candy stores going and say, hey, no 10-year-olds can buy candy, right? That's obviously not fair. Same thing for housing, unless it's legally a 55 plus or a senior retirement community, for example. Then that might make sense, right? Because they might have specific services for that class of folks that might need a little bit more assistive services. There's a bunch of different reasons for why that is the case. But legally, in general, you can't discriminate for someone just because they have kids. So hopefully this was helpful, everybody. I wanted to talk about fair housing because it's a pretty important topic. And a lot of times landlords, they might just get in trouble unintentionally. But it's there to help guide you on what you can do and can't do. And it's also there to protect folks of certain classes. And I hope this was helpful, everybody. And again, I came with some analogies, and I'm also looking for feedback. I want some feedback on what do you think is a better analogy to explain fair housing, because it's kind of hard to explain that to a kid, but using an analogy that they can understand, that's pretty important. All right. So I hope you all have an amazing day. Spend some quality time with your family and friends today. That's what life is all about. I'll see you all tomorrow. Have a good one, everybody.